I think the first step to destigmatize Tourette syndrome is by spreading awareness through representation. So that's why I'm sharing my personal Tourette story to you today. Hi, I'm Luca, and having Tourette's has greatly impacted my life, even though for the biggest part of it, I had no idea I had it. So today I want to tell you my story. So whether you have Tourette's yourself, know someone who has the disorder, or maybe you just want to learn, welcome. This is my story. It's real and it gets dark at times, but I promise there's a happy ending, so please stick around to that. Before I start my story, I want to make sure we're all on the same base level theory-wise, so let's start with a quick definition of Tourette syndrome. Tourette syndrome is a neurological disorder and its key features are tics. So those are involuntary sounds and movements. And up to 85% of people with Tourette's also have another conditions such as ADHD or OCD or anxiety. And the early symptoms of Tourette's are typically noticed first in childhood, with the average onset between the ages of 3 and 9 years. So usually children will start experiencing tics and get diagnosed even before they hit puberty. And often the tics will get better when they start puberty. However, that's not really what happened for me. I have both ADHD and Tourette's. F*** off. And both those disorders typically manifest in childhood. But as a child, I didn't know that I had those things, even though in retrospect, it's pretty obvious. I grew up in the 90s in the east of the Netherlands. And even though both ADHD and Tourette's were pretty well known during that time, the awareness wasn't as widespread as it is today. Growing up, I already had tics, but they were pretty mild. I mean, I would clear my throat, make faces. What child doesn't do that, right? Even though I had ADHD and I had problems focusing during class, I could learn pretty easily. So my parents just thought that I was bored. Makes sense, right? Many people with ADHD feel like there's something wrong with them, just because they look at other people, how they function, and they just can't seem to do it. And that's how I felt. And I felt really guilty and I was really anxious as a child. So I hid everything constantly. I learned that from a very young age, including my tics. I felt weird. I felt like I was just bothering people. As long as I was hiding it, I thought I was doing the best I could. And that was fine for a long time. But suppressing my anxiety constantly really took its toll, especially when I hit puberty. So around the age of 12, 13, I became really depressed. It just became worse and worse. That's when I started seeing psychologists, psychiatrists. I was even an inpatient for a little while. When I was around 15, I was suicidal, self-harming, and I was really struggling. But I always felt that that was my fault, that I should just learn to act normal. During that time, I had a psychiatrist and he eventually diagnosed me with ADHD. And in that same sentence, he said, "Oh, and you also have Tourette's." And I thought, that's ridiculous. I mean, I know what Tourette's looks like. I've seen documentaries and that's not what I have, right? I decided to ignore it. I didn't even tell my family or my friends. There were only two possible responses. They could either say, "You don't have that," and then I would feel silly or invalidated, or even worse, they could say, "Oh yeah, I see that," and that would mean I would actually have Tourette's, and I didn't want that. I just pushed it down, forgot all about it, and I was fine. And I was fine for a long while. Eventually, I started university. I studied arts and I started working in the music industry. In that group of people, it wasn't that weird to be a bit strange or even twitch a bit. So I could just keep pretending that that's all that there was. I mean, I had tics, but I was able to hide them from others and even hide them from myself. I just pretended that they weren't there and I was fine. Until maybe, because I've been suppressing everything for so long, I've become so anxious and so perfectionistic that I just couldn't make my career there. So I decided to just quit the whole thing and, you know what, start working in IT. And I knew nothing about computers and I knew nothing about programming. So that might come as a surprise if you know that I was such an anxious person at the time. But for me, it was like, I know nothing about this, so I got nothing to lose. And there's no use in being perfectionistic if you already know that you don't know anything. So that's what I did, and I got a job and it was great and I loved it. But you know, that meant transitioning from this alternative group of art students and ravers to suits and ties and 40-hour work weeks and conversations at water coolers, and then being a bit twitchy and weird. I mean, people are going to notice that, and I was going to notice that. And I started to feel worse. I was getting more and more tired. I was working 40 hours a week, and on top of that, I had to travel about 5 to 6 hours every day to get to and from work. So I was exhausted. I wasn't used to that. I was starting to get more tics, but I felt that I had to prove myself, so I couldn't show those. I mean, people were thinking I was weird enough. So I would hide tics under my desk or even go to the toilet to have tics. And then when I got home, I couldn't relax. When I was lying on the sofa trying to watch Netflix, my legs would just go like crazy, and I would try to have a glass of wine and throw the glass of wine at the wall. But I was just ignoring that because I was adulting, right? I decided to ignore the whole thing and keep going. During that time, I was in a pretty bad relationship, and when I finally got out, I had to switch jobs. I had to move several times across the country, and that took its toll. I mean, I had so very little left, but I still felt that it was my responsibility as an adult to not show my weakness. And I was fine until I wasn't. So the first time it happened, I was laying in bed. I hadn't been sleeping for days, and I just felt my entire body cramp up, and then all of a sudden I just got stuck. I was making sounds, I was feeling like I was having a seizure. My bones felt itchy, my nerve endings felt like there was electricity running through them, and it hurt, but I just couldn't stop. So I tried to get up out of bed. I got up, and then I just collapsed and fell down on a bare concrete floor. I lay there for what felt like hours. It must have been shorter, just twitching and cramping, and until I was so tired that I could drag myself back to bed. My brain just broke. And my tics started to get worse and even more elaborate. So even though at first they might just be like a head jerk or a cough, at some point I started developing more elaborate tics, like making a whole hand movement, saying whole words that kind of fit with my image of Tourette's. And then I remembered what my psychiatrist had said 10 years ago, and I was like, maybe there's something to this whole Tourette story. So I went to my GP and they referred me to a neurologist. That neurologist is specialized in Tourette Syndrome. She examined me, she asked me a bunch of questions, and she was like, yeah, that's Tourette's, that's really Tourette's. And I was just so happy. I just felt like this weight had lifted off my shoulders. It might not be as important to other people, but to me it was validation that I wasn't crazy and that there wasn't something wrong with my character, that I wasn't some weird act. So I started doing my own research. I started by watching YouTube videos. And then I joined Facebook groups and just read some stories, maybe post some stuff myself. And then I mustered up the courage to go to my first real meetup of the Dutch Tourette's organization. And I just felt so at home from the get-go. And I felt validated. That gave me the validation that I needed to tell other friends that I have Tourette's, and to even tell my colleagues that I have this. And that has changed my life so much, because now I don't have to worry every single day at work that every single movement that I make is weird, or that every single twitch is going to be interpreted as something else, because they know. And that has given me so much more energy, so much more freedom. So even though it took me nearly 30 years to get to that point, I've never been happier. I'm not scared anymore. Even though my tics right now are among the worst that I've ever had, I've never felt better. So that's why I wanted to make this video, because you might be watching this and going through the same thing. You might be ashamed or scared. And I understand, because Tourette's is scary and it hurts sometimes. But it sounds like a cliche, but it gets better. And there's a community out there. Just hold on and reach out. We're all here, and I'm here. I'd love to hear your story. And if you leave a comment below, I promise I'll read it and reply. I'm not a doctor, obviously, but maybe I can provide some support. I'll leave some resources in the description below as well, so you can just read some stuff. I just hope that this video will reach someone that needs to hear it, because if I knew then what I know now, my life would have been so much easier. It would not cure my Tourette's in any way. But sometimes the disorder itself is not the biggest problem. It's how we deal with it. Just remember, you are not alone, and we're all here. Hold on, reach out. There's so much more to talk about regarding Tourette's and the whole stigma around it. There's still so many misunderstandings. I couldn't fit that all in this one video. I just wanted to start by sharing my personal story. So if you're interested in hearing that, please let me know. And if you're still here, that means you stuck to the end. So thank you so much, and I hope to see you soon. Okay, bye. Hey, yay!